Thanks so much for being with us at Livewire Church Online. We know that today's message is really going to make a difference in your day. It's going to make a difference in your week. So we want to thank you for joining us. So let's get ready because we're about to get wired to the vine of life.
All I want for Christmas, all I want, all I, right? It seems like the emphasis around this time of the year, but let's be honest, it seems like the emphasis any time out of the year is on me, on I, on you, on myself, on this is what I want. And so around this time of the year, and if we're honest, that selfishness creeps in every single day of our lives because it just comes naturally to us. It's all I want. What do I want? I want everybody to think about me. I want everything to be about me this Christmas season and every day. And I want even everybody else to think about me because I want a brand new car. I want a house. I want to get married. I want more money. I want more clothes. You ever heard this before? Yeah. I mean, and don't point the finger because we obviously or honestly should be pointing the finger at ourselves because it's I. And then we even go on another side and we say, well, I don't want to be sick. And I don't want to be in debt. And I don't want to be depressed. I don't want to be discouraged. Now, when you think of those things, they're not necessarily bad. None of those things, the things that we don't want as far as being sick, being depressed, being discouraged, being in debt, I mean, that's good that we don't want those things. And then it's not necessarily bad to want a house. It's not necessarily bad to want a car, and it's not necessarily bad to want more money or clothes and that sort of thing. But when the emphasis is just solely upon us, this is where we kind of get things twisted a little bit. And when I say that, I know there are things that we have to think about, and there are responsibilities that we each have, that I have personal responsibilities, and that we all have personal responsibilities. But if we're honest, we probably think of ourselves too much and think about others way too little. If we're honest, we probably think about ourselves a whole lot around this time of year and think about ourselves a whole lot throughout the year. And then every so often, oh, you know what? Yeah, let me help my friend. Let me help this person on the side of the road. Every so often, what I want to do in this series is I want to get us to think more about people. I want to get us to think about more about others. And not that there is necessarily a balance, that balance is going to look different for you and I. I'm not saying 50% you and then 50% other people. I'm not talking about that. It's not even about all of that. It's about being just being more aware of other people and other people's needs and not even just the fact that they might be in need, but just being generous, just saying, hey, you know what? I just want to bless somebody because I just want to bless them. I just want to give something to somebody because I just want to give it. Now, the reason why I mentioned last week sets it up is because we looked at God and we said, well, why be concerned about people if God's not concerned? Or is he? And we only looked at 7 things. I mean, we can go throughout the Word of God and we could dig out one thing after another. We looked at 7 things that we pinpointed that God says, hey, I gave, I've given. And one of the main things, or the main thing, if not the main thing, is Jesus Christ. He gave us Jesus, the gift that is above all gifts, the main gift of all. He gave us Jesus Christ. And so when we went through there, one of the things that just rung very clear, as those of you that were here, and again, go watch it, go listen to it if you weren't, but what rang very clear is that God is a giver, and that God's sole focus is on people, is on individuals, that he loves humanity too much to just throw humanity away, even though we've messed up so many times individually and just as a human, just as human beings in the earth, how many times we've messed up and turned away from God. God had every right to give up on us, but God chose not to, and he chooses not to because he loves us too much. What if, friends, what if this Christmas season, what if every single day it wasn't about us, but it was about people? What if we were more concerned? In fact, I would go as far as to say this, The things that we want, that we personally want, like I said, they're not necessarily bad. They can be if we're just solely focused on that. But the things that we want, whether it's a house, whether it's a car, whether it's a promotion, or it's more money, or a new business, whatever it might be, or the things that we even don't want, that we say, well, I don't want to be sick, I don't want to be depressed, I don't want to be in debt. When we look at those things, the key to happiness and success, the key to having those or not having those things actually rests in one verse, and it actually rests in words that Jesus actually spoke. Paul was toward the end of, he was on his way to being arrested. The Holy Spirit, God had already told him that. And so he was on his way, but before he was making his way where he was going to be arrested, he was going to go on trial and suffer, Paul got his leaders together and he started sharing some pertinent things, some important things. He's like, guys, if this is the last time that I'm going to have with you, I'm going to share some things. I'm going to share some last minute things just in case I never get the opportunity to talk with you again. And Paul, among all these things, there's a statement he makes, and he actually repeats words that Jesus spoke. And I want you to see this, because the key to what we want and what we don't want actually rests in these words. And actually, it's the theme. This is the theme verse, or the theme of our series, All I Want for Christmas. Notice what Paul says. We'll pick up on in Acts. Where's my clicker? Acts 20:35. If you can click that over for me. Okay. Acts 20:35. Notice this. You should remember the words of the Lord Jesus. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Now, this word blessed, in case you're thinking of just blessing, which it includes that. Like we think, oh, blessed, okay, I'm blessed. I've received a blessing, or I received something. This word also means to be happy. And it also means to be well off. In other words, it means to have success. So the key to happiness and the key to success is actually giving. See, we're thinking, oh, well, it's receiving. Like, if I could get everybody in this room to give me a gift, man, I'm blessed. I'm truly blessed. And yeah, there's an aspect to that you are blessed, or that I would be blessed. But actually the key, and honestly, this is so brilliant. This is genius. If we can grab a hold of this, this is very, very genius. This is so brilliant what Jesus said. It's more blessed. You're going to be more happy. You're going to be more well off. You're going to be more successful if you have that attitude, and if you choose to be generous, if you give rather than receive. It's genius when you think about it. Now, here's the thing. I get it. I'm with you. Because the thing that we think of right away is, if I give that $10, if I give that $100, or if I give that gift card, or if I give those clothes, or if I give that piece of furniture, if I give that to somebody, if I'm just generous and I just give it away, now I don't have it. And so we look at the fact that I've given that bill, or that check, or that gift card, or that thing, I've given that to somebody, now they have it and I don't. And you're exactly right. But you actually have more, because you're acting like God. And whenever we act like God, and this is why Jesus said it's more blessed. You got to get a hold of this. He says it's more blessed to give away than to receive. Because when God sees you acting like Him, then God says, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to increase your resources. I'm going to increase what you have. So yeah, what we give away, we don't have. Because instead, we actually have more when we give. In fact, I would say it like this: giving is the wonder that unlocks happiness and success. It's brilliant. I mean, it's awesome. It's so incredible. It's amazing that I could get rid of stuff and actually get more stuff. I mean, where can you do that? Like, I could actually, it's almost like the concept of investing. Like, I can invest my money into something and I could expect a return. And that's exactly what's happening, is that we're investing in people. When we give and we're generous, when we invest into people, God says, you're going to get a return on your investment. God's going to bring that back on us. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more. We're going to look at this a little bit more. But two reasons I want to look at that it's better to give than to receive. One is this. Number one, it prevents you and I from becoming a materialistic, consumeristic egotist. We were talking about this last week. It prevents you and I mean, think about this. We won't spend money that we don't have on things we don't need. We won't spend money on just to get newer and better. And we won't just be thinking about ourselves. And consequently, it saves us money in the long run, and we won't be stressed out trying to keep up with the Joneses. All right? I mean, we won't be stressed out like, oh man, I gotta have the car because everybody in my neighborhood has, this price car or whatever, or this price automobile, whatever it might be. Oh, I've gotta have the house because all of my friends have a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house. I've gotta have the same house. We don't have to be stressed out over that. We don't have to be materialistic and think, oh, well, I gotta have. Oh, it's okay, I'll get into debt to get the stuff that I have. People think I'll have money because I always have new stuff. Why? Why are we so caught up with impressing people? When in all reality, people don't matter in that regard. Like what people say and what people think about us, it doesn't matter in that regard. What matters is what God thinks about you, what God thinks about me. And so one of the things that giving, it's better to give than to receive. One of the reasons it's better is because it'll prevent us from being materialistic and just spending money we don't have. It'll prevent us from being consumeristic and just buying something because we want the newest, the latest iPhone, or the newest, latest Android or computer or game system or whatever it is, car, whatever, boat, you name it, fishing pole, shotgun, whatever. It'll prevent, not saying, again, please don't misunderstand what I'm saying, because I'm not saying that those things are necessarily wrong. But when all of our focus is just on that, we won't think about. And consequently, friends, here's what will happen is if we do these things, we're just concerned about ourselves. Oh, I'm going to get newer and better. I'm going to spend money I don't have. We are definitely going to be less aware of people's needs because we're going to look at our own finances and we're going to say, oh, you know what? I'm in debt. I'm $20,000, $50,000 in debt. I can't give a Thanksgiving meal. I can't buy a gift for somebody because, hey, look at all the debt. Well, what is the reason that we're in debt? Because we've been thinking about ourselves all the time. And I mean, I hear people say it all the time. Well, I can't give. Well, I can't do something. I can't do something about that program or that project that you guys, I can't give to the church. I can't do that. Why? Because we've been thinking about ourselves. And if we're honest, friends, me too, if we're honest, the reason why we're in debt is because we've been thinking about ourselves so much. And we've been thinking about what we want, what I want to get. Number two, the other thing is giving, the reason why giving is better than receiving is, again, as I said a moment ago, conducting yourself like Jesus produces blessing from Jesus. When we act like Jesus, God's going to bless us. Now, I want to show you just kind of an example, a story, a real-life event that took place. I want to give you a real-life example of this in action and this actually playing out. And don't make the mistake, let's not make the mistake as we read this of saying, oh yeah, this is a Bible story. No, this is an actual event that's recorded in history that men took the time to write down and say, hey, you know what? This is what happened. Jesus was here, and here's what took place. In fact, we're going to read it from John. John was one of the top three, if you will. Peter, James, and John, that John, okay, he was one of the ones that Jesus took aside in different times, special times, and John wrote about this. In fact, each one of them, Matthew, Mark, Luke, I believe also, each one of the Gospels, the Gospel writers that were writing about Jesus' life, they wrote about this particular situation, this event that took place. And when we dive into it, I want you to just listen closely to what we're talking about and what's going on, because it's exactly what we're diving into or what we're talking about as it relates to us individually and what we have and what we can give. So notice John, again, is recording Jesus or recording this event, John chapter 6, Verse 5, notice this, Jesus soon saw a huge crowd of people coming to look for him. Now, the thing about this huge crowd is, I mean, that could be 1,000 people could be a huge crowd. I mean, a couple hundred people could be, 500 people could be a huge crowd. There were actually, and at this time, they just recorded the men, how many men were there. And there were 5,000 men that were here. This is the crowd. This is the size, huge crowd that we're talking about. Now, if you said that every man had a wife, then now we're kind of up to 10,000. If you added children, said, all right, well, let's give every family, let's give every husband and wife at least one child. Now we're somewhere around 15,000, right? Now, chances are they had more than one child, okay? And obviously, chances are not every man was married or every woman was married. But we're somewhere around 15,000 people. This is a big crowd, okay? This is like Joel Osteen's mega church, okay? I mean, in a stadium, 15,000 people are there to hear the message and to be at church, right? 15,000 people. Or just think of if you were in a stadium and it holds 10,000 plus, 15,000, 20,000. I mean, this is the huge crowd. Now, notice that Jesus saw this huge crowd of people that were coming to look for him. They were looking for him. They were like, Jesus. Oh, there's Jesus. They were looking for Jesus. Now, some of these people, maybe they heard of Jesus. Some of these people, maybe they've already seen Jesus teach, or they've seen maybe some of the miracles Jesus did. But these people were looking for him. Now, think about it. Whenever you're looking for Jesus, personally, what are you looking for? Like some of these people, they came looking for Jesus because they were looking for hope. Some of these people were looking for truth. Some of these people were looking for a miracle. They were looking for help. They were looking for assistance. But the fact of the matter is these people were looking. 15,000 plus people are looking for Jesus. They're searching for Jesus. Now, Jesus recognizes this, and he turns to one of his disciples, one of the 12. He turns to Philip, and he asks, where can we buy bread to feed all these people? Now, what if that was your problem? And you didn't have any planning. You didn't have 3 months. 6 months. You didn't have the year to plan for this event, this huge event where there's going to be 15,000 plus people, and we've got to provide food for all these people. We've got to provide a meal. We've got to provide drinks for all of these people. Okay, if you had the planning, if I had the planning, we could pull it off. But what if somebody turned to you and said, hey, there's 15,000 plus people here. Where can we get food for all these people? Like, you know, where's the gun? Just shoot me now. You know, there's no way every single one of us would be baffled by this question. If we were there, we were Philip, every single one of us would be baffled. And Philip actually responds much like every single one of us would. Notice, he was testing Philip. Jesus was testing Philip because he already knew what he was going to do. But he was kind of testing Philip. He wanted to see, all right, Philip, what would Philip's response be? Notice what Philip responds, how Philip responds. He responds much like we would. Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to feed them. He says, even if we worked for months, Jesus, I mean, we could work for months and months and months, we still wouldn't have enough money to buy a meal and to buy drinks for all of these people. Now, here's the thing, is Jesus saw a need, and Jesus wanted to see to that need. But did you also notice that Jesus was involving Philip, and you'll see this in just a moment, he was involving his students, his disciples into the mix. He wanted to involve them into what he was getting ready to do. Jesus says, Philip, you know, what do you think? I mean, how are we going to feed all these people? Now, Philip responded much like we would all respond. He responded with a natural answer. And we would all do the same thing. He said, well, you know, if my calculations serve me correctly, I mean, it's going to take a good year to get all the food we need so that we can provide a meal and provide drinks for all of these people. But what Philip failed to involve, or what Philip failed to think from, was a supernatural perspective. And now Philip at this point, he had already seen Jesus do a couple miracles. He already seen Jesus do some crazy stuff. But yet Philip was stuck on the natural. And I wonder how many of us, we look at naturally what we have, and we don't think about how supernaturally not only God can provide, not only for us, but not only how God can provide through us for other people, but not only that, how God can supernaturally multiply what maybe little we have. And so Jesus is kind of testing, and Jesus is kind of testing us today. And maybe we're looking at, well, you know, in the natural, yeah, there's nothing. But would you consider the supernatural? would you and I consider that the God that is on our side, the Jesus that is on our side is all powerful, that he's all knowing, that he's ever present, that he's God and he can do whatever he wants in my life and he can do whatever he wants through my life? Would you consider that? Because if he is God, then not only, should we look at the natural and say, okay, naturally, there's nothing wrong with that. But if we fail to look at the supernatural, then we're going to mess it up every time because we're going to put God in a natural box. And we're going to say, well, naturally, this is all we could do. So God, here you go. I mean, you're going to have to work with this. No, God doesn't dwell and he doesn't work in the realm of the natural. He works in the realm of the supernatural. God doesn't work, listen, friends, God doesn't work in the realm. He doesn't dwell in the realm of limitations. He works in the realm of unlimitations. God is not limited. We can't put him in a box and say, okay, God, yep, this is all we could do. So there's nothing wrong with looking at the natural and saying, okay, yep, this is all I have. But I know that God can do whatever he wants to do in this situation. And this is what Jesus was trying to get his disciples, and especially Philip, to see. Now notice again, backtrack for just a second. Jesus recognizes the crowd and he sees the need. And he always wants to see to the need. What if that was us? Like when we see somebody in need, we didn't even think twice. We just said, hey, I'm going to help. However way I can help, I'm going to help. See, Jesus is Jehovah Jireh. Jehovah Jireh means God the provider. And actually a more accurate definition or a more accurate description of that name of God is God, the one who sees a need and sees to that need. See, God doesn't just see the need and say, oh, well, hopefully they get what they need. No, God sees a need, and then he sees to that need. He goes and provides for that need. And so I would say it this way: make Jesus your central need, and he will satisfy your central needs. If we will make him our number one priority, if we will say, Jesus, you are number one in my life, then guess what? We don't have to have a care in the world. And so even when we're generous and even when we give, we don't have to be concerned with, oh, well, I just gave something that now I don't have it. No, we don't have to be concerned because God who loves us, God who desires the best for us, God who says, I am going to bless you, he will provide for every single one of our needs if we put him first. And friends, it's opposite of the way we think in our human nature. Because again, we think, well, if I give it away, now I don't have it. And God's kingdom, God's mindset, his ways and his thoughts, not only are they higher than ours, but they're totally opposite of the way you and I think that the world, that the way life should work. It's different. And that's what we have to understand, and that's what we have to adopt, especially we may be sitting here today and say, well, Josh, that's cool, but this message really isn't for me because I'm blessed. Let me ask you something. Can you use a little more blessing in your life? I know I can. I don't make a whole lot of money. I don't have a whole lot. And I'm comfortable. I'm satisfied. But hey, I'll take more blessing if God wants to give it to me. Well, here's the key, friends. You want to be happy through life where even the situations and the circumstances, although they're hard and they're tough at times, they don't necessarily bother you simply because God's got this. He's got it under control. And so you don't have to be concerned about it. You know that God's got this. All we have to do is make him our central need. And he'll satisfy our central needs. Put him first. The other thing is this. Jesus is looking to you, just like he said, hey, Philip. He's looking to you and I to play a part in satisfying people's needs. See, think about this for a moment. This is huge because God doesn't need us. He doesn't need us to bless people. Jesus could have said, hey, you guys step back, watch this. And God could do that today. God could rain money down from heaven. He can rain food. He's done it. We read it in human history. He's done it. God could do that. But the fact of the matter is, friends, God wants to involve you. This is how incredible, listen to this. This is how incredible this is. God wants to involve you to do something that he can already do. He doesn't need you and me. He could do it himself, but he wants to involve you, and then because you chose to be involved, he's going to bless you for it. Where do we lose in that? Like, where do we lose? Oh, God, you want to use me, and I don't even have the resources, but you want to use what little bit I have. You want to use that, but you could do it yourself, and you want to use me? Yeah, I want to use you. And then on top of that, I'm going to bless you for it. How does that sound? Is this a trick question, God? I mean, that sounds good. Friends, he wants to involve us in the situation. He wants to involve us in blessing, in being generous to other people. He goes on, notice this. Verse 8, then Andrew, Simon's brother, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. There's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good is that to this huge crowd? He's like, what good is that to this huge crowd? I mean, there's a young boy here, he's willing to give up his lunch. There's a young boy here, Jesus, he's got, actually it says loaves, but it's talking about slices. He's got 5 slices of bread. He's got 5 slices of bread, and actually the fish weren't even, when you look it up, they weren't even that big. They were actually like a can of sardines. We've got a boy here, all right, remember, huge crowd, 15,000 plus people. We've got a young boy here. He's got a can of sardines, got a couple fish in it. He's got 5 loaves of 5 slices of bread, but then what good is that? I mean, what good is this? I mean, this is small. This is insignificant. This isn't going to change anybody's life. Can you imagine 15,000 people? I mean, what's everybody going to get? Like a grain of bread. Like bread, they're going to get a piece the size of a mustard seed, so small, it's not going to do anything for you. I mean, how much fish is everybody going to be able to get? 15,000 people going to be able to get out of a can of sardines. How many people are actually going to be sustained? And so they're thinking, it's not even, it's insignificant. It's small. What's my little bit? And how am I going to, and maybe you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, how is my little bit going to help? I mean, it's so small. My part is so small. What I could do, what I could bring into this is so small. And here's what I would say. You're insignificant. What you think is insignificant, your insignificance is somebody else's abundance when you gladly give it to Jesus. Now, let me share with you how your small thing or my small thing, how significant it actually is. We think it's insignificant. Hunter's parents left him home alone for days. Hungry and looking for food, young Hunter wandered outside where a neighbor found him and brought him to the police station. As a result, Hunter came to live on our campus. Today, Hunter has all his needs met, including a safe place to call home where he is loved and cared for. How wonderful it is to see his life transform. This situation, this kid's situation, is multiplied over and over and over. Kids that are being found, that are hungry, or that are growing up in homes where they are not being provided for, they're not being cared for, they're not being loved on. And you know who takes care of this? Florida Baptist Children's Homes. And it's one of the organizations that our church supports. And what we can do, our church, at this point in our life, as far as our church, we support them with $25 a month. Now, our little bit, it doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, $25 a month, it's not going to go too far for Hunter, let alone all the other kids that are in their home, that are in the orphanage. It's not going to go all that far. But when you take our church's little bit, and you take other people's little bit, and you take some people's lot of bit, and you take other organizations and other churches that are giving to Florida Baptist Children's Home, our little bit doesn't seem all that insignificant any longer. See, whatever we can do, whatever little bit we can do that we think is so small and that it's insignificant, actually, it's an abundance when you put it all together, friends. Another one. Some of you remember Danny and Kimberly Mejia. They were longtime members here at Livewire Church, longtime friends of Christine and I. They were missionaries in Guatemala. They came to live in the States for a couple years. They went back a few months ago. I think it's been about 4 or 5 months that they've been in Guatemala full-time missionaries. Well, as a church, we support them. We support them with $25 a month. Back in October, they do this every year. Back in October, they did a medical outreach. We were able, speaking about the medical outreach, we were able to treat 2,032 people medically. Now, this is eye exams, this is medication, this is trying to remember what the other one, ear exams, and then every person as they go through kind of the medical campaign, as they go through each and every segment, then at the very end they hear the good news, they hear the gospel. They said every person that came through the clinic was prayed for and presented the gospel, the good news, one-on-one, and 445 of those received Jesus as Savior and Lord of their life. And friends, our $25 a month, it doesn't do that. But you put our 25 with other people that say, hey, you know what? I believe in Living Water Teaching, what Danny and Kimberly Mejia are doing over there with that ministry. I'm going to sow into that. Churches sow into that. Other organizations sow into that. Now our little bit doesn't seem all that insignificant. We're part of an organization called ARC, Association of Related Churches. ARC plants life-giving churches around the United States, okay? And we're a part of that. Actually, almost 8 years ago, this organization helped plant Livewire Church. They helped us plant with resources, with finances. They helped us plant this church. And so we sow back into this organization because we believe as a church, we believe in planting life-giving churches. We don't believe in dead churches in the United States or all across the world for that matter. We believe in life-giving churches, and so we're helping plant life-giving churches. Now, we give 2% of our income, what we receive every single month, we give 2%. On average, that's around $200 a month that we're giving to ARC to plant life-giving churches. Back in September, and every month there are a few churches that are being planted, but back in September, we planted 26 new life-giving churches in the United States. Now, friends, $200, that's more than $25. Well, we can't plant 26 churches in 1 month with $200. We can't do that. But you take our little bit, you take other people's, other organizations, other churches, and now our little bit doesn't seem all that insignificant. You get the point? You think that all you have is something small. All you have is a little bit, and your little bit will make a huge impact, will make a huge difference. If you and I want God's blessing to come to a screaming halt, just be stingy. Let's just be stingy. I guarantee you that this lad, I guarantee you that this young boy, I guarantee you that he was not the only one that had some lunch. I guarantee you, in that 15,000 people, I guarantee you there were some people that had food. And when the disciples were going around and saying, hey, does anybody have some food that we can split up? Some people were like, well, yeah, ho, you ain't getting my Big Mac. You're not getting my Outback steak. Man, I had this set up. I knew I was coming to see Jesus, and I knew I was going to be with him for a while, and I was going to have a good steak dinner while I was listening to Jesus. You ain't taking my steak. You're not having it. I can guarantee you there were some people that were stingy, and maybe this young boy, maybe even he was like reluctant to give up his lunch. You know why I know this? Because he had barley bread, and barley flour is a cheaper flour, if you will, than wheat flour. And so this suggests that this boy was actually poor. Maybe he was in extreme poverty. And so this boy comes with his barley bread and his fish, and he's like, wait, but that's my lunch you're taking. And he's not even sure, like he's holding on to it because he's not even sure, like, am I even going to be able to eat? What are they going to do with this? This is all I have. Maybe that was all he had for the day. It could be that maybe that was all he had for the week. We don't know. But there's some people, just like in our world today, there's some people that are in extreme poverty that could be, all they have for the week. Can you imagine? 5 slices of bread and a can of sardines. And so maybe he was even reluctant, but he gave it up. He said, I'm going to give my little bit. I'm not going to be stingy. In fact, Solomon writes about this in Proverbs. He says, those that give, they're going to have more. But those that are going to be stingy, they're going to have less. That's the way it works. We may have a lot now, but if we're stingy with what we have right now, you can rest assured you're going to have less sometime down the road. And I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm just telling you that's the way that it works. That's just a fact. It's better to give than to receive. Notice verse 11. So they've got the slices of bread, they've got the fish. Jesus takes the loaves. He gave thanks to God and distributed them to the people. Afterward, he did the same with the fish, and they all ate as much as they wanted. How in the world does that happen? Because God dwells in the realm. Jesus dwells in the realm of the supernatural. And he can take our little bit and he can multiply it. Notice what happened. And they all ate as much as they wanted. Maybe this boy gladly gave it up. Maybe he was reluctant, okay? Regardless, he gave it up. And you know what this boy was able to do? He was able to eat way more than 5 slices. He was able to eat more than 2 fishes. Why? Because they all ate as much as they wanted. There was a feast there, and they all ate as much as they wanted. They were blessed. God took what this boy gave, he multiplied it. Just because this boy was willing to give it up, he multiplied it, and it blessed 15,000 plus people. You want to tell me, is it better to give than to receive? Yeah, it's better to give than to receive. Notice, after everyone was full. All right, think about how you felt after Thanksgiving dinner. You know, big stomach, you're about 8.5 months pregnant. And you're just sitting on, like I had to sit on the couch, man, and I was done. I mean, my family was wondering, man, Josh, what's going on? I'm done. I ate too much, you know? And these people ate until they were totally and completely fat and full. Notice this, and everyone was full. Jesus told his disciples, notice this, now gather the leftovers so that nothing is wasted. So you mean everybody ate till they were full, and there was leftovers? You know, there was some turkey left over, there was some green bean casserole left over, there was some corn, some mashed potatoes. I mean, probably at your Thanksgiving dinner, just like us, our whole family was there at my brother's house, and every single one of us took plates of leftovers home with us. And Jesus says, gather all the leftovers so that nothing is wasted. Notice, they picked up the pieces and filled 12 baskets with scraps left by the people who had eaten from the 5 barley loaves. 12 baskets full. Why? Because Jesus dwells in the realm of the supernatural. And we think we only have a little. And how can God even use that? God can, God will, and he'll multiply it. And on top of that, he told his disciples, remember, he said, you pick up the baskets. And there were 12 baskets full, one for each disciple. All because they said, Jesus, you want to use me? You want to use me? Okay. And they were blessed for it, friends. All because they allowed Jesus to use them. Your kindness will always result in God's kindness in your life. Always. Whatever act of kindness, it will always result in God's kindness in your life. Let me show you how this plays out. Luke records 6:38. Luke 6:38, Jesus is speaking. He says, give and you will receive. Just stop there for a moment. Give. Just give. Just have an attitude of giving. Just be generous with what you have. I'm not saying give what you don't have. I'm not saying that we should go into debt to give to people. No. In fact, we'll look at this in a couple weeks. I'm not saying that. I'm saying give what you have. Give what you're able to do. What we wish we could do for a bunch of people, what could we do for that one? And give. Be generous. Jesus says give and you will receive. Now he describes how we're going to receive. Notice this. He's going to describe how we're going to receive. He says, your gift will return to you, full pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount you get back. Notice Jesus says, if you give, you're going to receive. And what you receive is going to be so much more than what you give. What did the disciples do? Jesus said, hey, how are we going to feed all these people? Well, you know what? It's going to take forever to try to gather up all this food. Jesus says, well, you know, Philip, let's think about what I have the power to do. Jesus says, okay, well, you know, I want to use you, Philip. I want to use you, disciples. They say, all right, we're in this thing. Let's do it. And what happens? The little bit that they were able to do, which in their case, they didn't even provide the food. They just said, all right, Jesus, you know, we'll distribute, we'll help out. What do you want us to do? He said, sit the people in certain circles. I think it was 50, groups of 50, sit them and all that. So they were involved in the process, and they were blessed abundantly at the end. Overwhelmingly blessed. And Jesus is saying that's what happens in our lives. When we have that attitude of giving, that's what's going to happen. We're going to receive so much more than we gave. I can tell you this, for the last almost 8 years, ever since we started this church, Christine and I have not had health insurance because we can't afford it. We just can't afford it. And I'm sure there are some of you that are in that same position as well. We just can't afford it. And for 8 years, you know how God's blessed us in that? We have not had to go to the hospital. We've not had to have any major surgeries or go to the doctor for any reason, for anything major. God has blessed us in that regard. I mean, that's incredible because we don't have the money for health insurance. All because we continue to give. We give. For us, friends, it's 10%, and that's hard. That's been hard at times. But for us, that's what we grew up with. We grew up with, you give the tithe belongs to God. And that's just what we do. That's just what Christine and I have done. And we've done this since we were teenagers, and God has blessed us. We tell you story after story about how God has blessed our lives every single year. And we're not wealthy, but God has blessed us. He's taken care of, and that's just one of those needs where for 8 years, we don't have health care, and God's taking care of our health. We've been in good health. Why? Because when we give, we're going to receive. God's going to bless. He's going to bless you and I. Now notice Jesus says at the very end there, he says the amount you give will determine the amount you get back. Now he's not talking about the amount from the standpoint of dollar figure or the amount as far as the amount of stuff. He's talking about the amount of, and from the standpoint of the amount of where you being honest with yourself and me being honest with myself, where I know that the amount that I'm giving, that I'm doing, that I'm providing is a generous amount. That's where the key is. See, it's not the amount physically as much as it's the attitude of our heart. Every single one of us could give, right? And every single one of us, we could put a penny into the offering box, just to use that as an example. We could put a penny into the offering box. But did we give generously? Like, did I give generously? No, if I look personally, for me personally, if I look at my personal life, I could give more. I could be generous more, and that's what Jesus is talking about. The amount of our generosity will determine the amount of God's generosity in our life. It's an attitude, friends. It's an attitude. It is more blessed. You are going to be more happy. I'm going to be more happy when I give, when I'm focused more on that than I'm focused on receiving. So the question that I want to close up with, what if all I wanted for Christmas, what if all I wanted every single day was to be more kind to people? What if I was looking for more opportunities to do acts of kindness for people? And you may ask, well, how do I do that? And I'm not saying this because I'm the lead pastor. You could ask people that have been here for years, some people that have been here since the beginning. I believe with all my heart, this is great ground to sow in because we're changing lives. Those are just a couple of the stories. And we're changing lives through those organizations. We're a part of those 500 people that they wouldn't have heard the good news had we not given and other people been a part of, other organizations been a part of giving to that medical outreach. We're transforming lives. One of the ways is you can give. Support this church financially on a regular basis because lives are being changed, not just in this church, but outside of this church. Another way that you can show that act of kindness, that you can say, hey, you know what, I'm looking for opportunities to be more kind, is remember we said that God gives us, every single one of us gives us things that we're really good at, okay? We've got teams here at Livewire Church. You could join a team and you could do something that you're really good at. And maybe you say, well, Josh, I only have a little bit of time. It's a little bit. You say, hey, I can do one Sunday a month. That's fine. Give your little bit and watch God multiply it. Watch God bless it. Another way that you can be more kind, that I could be more kind, is we just talked about in the announcements. We've got our next Crazy Love December. We've got 30 kids that we want to provide gifts for, that we want to give them a Christmas that otherwise they're probably not going to have a Christmas. We want to get each of these kids gifts. Now, actually, I've been told that there's a couple families that already took 8 kids. So there's actually 22 kids now that are left. We've got boys and girls back there, and you have the opportunity to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to exercise this. I'm going to exercise the word that I heard today, and I am going to exercise that act of kindness. And here's the little bit that I could do. And every single one of us, we do our little bit, and we can provide for every one of those kids, and maybe even multiple gifts for each one of those kids. Friends, I'm not asking you, and more importantly than that, God is not asking us, myself included, God is not asking us to do beyond what we're able to. He's just saying, hey, will you give me a little bit and watch me use that? Watch me multiply that. So what if what we wanted was not so much something for ourselves, but was actually something we wanted for somebody else? And maybe exercising more kindness this week in somebody else's life. God, I just thank you for your word today. I thank you for your message today. I thank you for what you've shared with us today. And God, I just pray, Lord, that there is not one person here today that was offended because we were talking about giving. Because God, you know my heart. You know that it's not about money for me. It's not about building bigger buildings and just having a whole bunch of stuff here at this church. God, you know my heart. You know our church's heart, our vision and our mission. And God, I pray that we didn't hear from a person today as much as we heard from you. And that every single one of us would wrestle, that every single one of us would think on, that we would mull over what you have spoken to us individually and what you have spoken to us as a church. God, there is so much that we can be thankful for, as you have provided and you've given us so much, and yet you still want to give more simply by using our lives and simply by using our stuff to transform other people's lives and to bless other people's lives, and yet bless us in return on top of that. God, help us just to see that your ways are different, that your thoughts are higher, that they're even absolutely better than anything we could come up with. God, that your word is true and that it works. It works. And so, God, I pray that every single one of us today, that we would take our next step, whatever that next step looks like, that we would take our next step today. And God, we thank you. We give you praise. We give you glory and honor in Jesus' name.